Welcome, everybody, to my conversation with Ayanna Pressley, representative of Massachusetts, 7th District. Congresswoman Pressley and I share a common interest and a driving interest in reforming what is such an unjust criminal justice system. So I am really happy to have you here today. And as you know, Ayanna, I've been working on criminal justice for almost 25 some years. I was initially targeted myself, and I was able to win those battles. And one of the key reasons was I had education, and I had some financial means to hire a lawyer, but I'm white. And that gave me a heck of an advantage in succeeding. And so since that point, I've devoted, and my wife and I have our efforts with the American Civil Liberties Union to work with them in concert. And we established the Trone Center. And the Trone Center is in New York City, and it's the headquarters of all the justice and equality work that the ACLU does. And I work with Anthony Romero. We talk by text or phone every week, literally. We become fast friends. Anthony and I were together on 9/11 with my wife, actually that day, and it kind of seared us together. So, our country is simply gone. It's gone from Jim Crow. It's gone from, first slavery to Jim Crow to mass incarceration. We are still looking at the same movie, and we have to change this, unjust system. And Congressman Pressley has been a champion for reform at both local and the federal level. She served 8 years in the Boston City Council and created legislation reforming school disciplinary systems. Our kids need to be in the classroom, not disciplined so they can't learn. It only puts them behind. And addressing the school to prison pipeline. And boy, is that an absolute disaster. It's school to prison, and then it's prison to prison, because we never get out, and the recidivism is over 75% 5 years later. She was elected in 2018 with myself and introduced numerous criminal justice reforms, including for the Injustice for Incarcerated Moms Act. We worked on that together. We co-sponsored it to help support her, helping on maternal health programs and end this shackling of pregnant individuals. We were together yesterday on the Maternal Health Caucus for Black women, which I always like to attend. And it's such an important issue that Congresswoman Pressley has been leading on. Massachusetts is lucky to have her. Her passion for justice is undeniable. And I'm looking forward to discussing much needed reforms. So Congressman Pressley, welcome, and thanks for being here.
Good to be with you, David, and thank you for being steadfast in your solidarity and in your allyship. And, something that I always appreciate about you is that you just speak plainly to these issues. There's no nuance. And I really do respect and appreciate that about you. And we need more blunt talk about these issues. When you're talking about, you were citing enslavement and Jim Crow, and now mass incarceration. There are so many things that I would characterize as policy violence that I could layer on to those generations of trauma, through enslavement and Jim Crow, redlining, the war on drugs. What we have a tradition of as a country is treating trauma with more trauma. Yeah. And so when you're talking about mass incarceration, I think when you have redline communities that are also food apartheid systems or transportation deserts, and they don't have, equal access to excellent schools and all of these things layered together, it creates a situation where communities are then, they're also undercounted. And so they're not equitably resourced. And so then people do things to survive, and then we criminalize that behavior, right? So, and the cycle just perpetuates. And this is why I introduced the People's Justice Guarantee as a comprehensive decarceration focused resolution. We need to stop criminalizing poverty. Again, you can't under-resource communities, and then when people do behaviors merely to survive, then criminalize that behavior. We have to decriminalize being unhoused, experiencing homelessness. We have to decriminalize mental health, substance use disorder. And so the People's Justice Guarantee, we engage in a very robust people's process because we think it's really important always to center the dignity and the expertise of people's lived experiences, especially when we're talking about bringing about the necessary change to replace systems of trauma and oppression, which have created this carceral state and mass incarceration, and replace that with systems and policies of healing and of true liberation. And so this People's Justice Guarantee was crafted in partnership with community organizers, with advocates, with impacted families, those with direct involvement with the justice system. So again, that we could confront these injustices head on. I'm a firm believer that the people closest to the pain should be the closest to the power, driving and informing the policy making. And so by being, as Brian Stevenson so often talks about, being proximate, being proximate, to the pain, you better understand the complexities, the intersectionalities, the nuance, but it's also where we develop the best solutions. And I'll just close here and say that the People's Justice Guarantee, this is a resolution which centers 5 key principles. So shared power, freedom, equality, human dignity, and safety. And so this comprehensive radical reimagining of our criminal legal system is intersectional, and it speaks to a range of issues from transit equity, housing justice, immigration, and decarceration.
I mean, that's just runs the whole gamut. And you're right, we need a whole of government method to look at this because it's so many parts of it that we can't pull people out of this cycle and all move forward as a country. And I'll tell you, Brian Stevenson and his comments about proximity.
Yes.
I mean, I was with John Lewis, and I'm sure you were on some of those same trips together. Both times I went down, and God, I loved it. And he is just so great. And we worked with him on a decarceration bill that we put together, and we're working with now. And what an individual.
Yes, he's a visionary. And he's a truth teller, and he's been a teacher to so many. And I think, when you go to the museums that he labored in love to see made real, you can appreciate just how systematic this has all been, that none of it is naturally occurring. And so if these are injustices that were created by man, when I was running, I would say, then these are justices that can be repaired by this one man.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's the work we seek to do every day. And I'm grateful for your partnership on these issues.
Yeah, everybody needs to go to Montgomery and see what Brian's created there. It's just really mind-opening for everyone when you go to Montgomery and see it. Let's talk about the People's Justice Guarantee a little bit. I'll focus on decriminalizing all these low-level offenses.
That's right.
I mean, this is, talk about why it's so important. And this whole idea, we have to reduce the prison population. I mean, we're 4.3% of the world's population. We're 25% of the world's prison population. That is an embarrassment. I mean, every one of us should be humiliated every day that we let that happen. What's your thoughts on how the People's Justice Guarantee will help us there?
Well, I just want to take a moment to do a plug for the fact that DAs matter, okay? I'm very fortunate to have a visionary and a progressive district attorney, Rachel Rollins, the first Black woman to be in that role. She's the district attorney for Suffolk County in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And, she has decriminalized those low-level offenses. And In fact, although there were many naysayers as to the merit of that approach, the data supports that, in fact, there are fewer crimes and arrests do go down. That's what the data supports, So I think at the end of the day, true reform to me is a system that aims to heal, and it's one that responds with compassion, and it's a system that seeks to address the root causes of crime. Violence is a byproduct of poverty, violence in all of its forms. Never forget bearing witness to a successful gun buyback program where they were trading people's guns for groceries, which really did and lines were around the corner. And it just showed the intersection of these social ills and the hardships that families are facing. So we need a system that seeks to address the root causes of crime by ensuring that every person has their basic needs met and the resources to thrive. That's really what it comes down to.
You're so right. It's root causes. And in the area I'm so focused on addiction, how can we treat addiction as a crime? It's a health issue.
Well, you had me at hello, and unfortunately, this is the transcendent issue. Every family has been impacted. My own is certainly, not exempt. During the pandemic, in Boston, we have seen an increase, if you can believe this, David, by 60% of the overdose of Black men by opioids, an increase of 60% during the pandemic, and which really just further underscores that a lot of people are self-medicating. And we have got to do a better job at creating not spin dry treatment, but on-demand, culturally competent, holistic care. And those are the sorts of programs that I've supported in my district that are holistic, and they're providing housing and job supports, and all of those things that are necessary. And personally, I really appreciate your laser focus on this public health crisis. My father battled substance use disorder, opioids, for a number of years, and he cycled in and out of the criminal legal system. And the fact that my father had to be incarcerated in order to get sober is, unacceptable. I'm very proud of him, and I'm grateful that while he was incarcerated, he attained 2 advanced degrees. He went on to become a professor of journalism and a published author. And I think about, how much creativity and intellectual capital is dying on the vine simply because people are sick. And then we are criminalizing that disease. And we don't need to get into the history lesson of the difference of how the crack cocaine epidemic has been treated in contrast to the opioid epidemic. You know that, and you speak very eloquently to that all the time. But I will just say that, my father's absence, because of his addiction and then the entanglement with the criminal legal system, it was very destabilizing and very traumatic. There was great, shame and stigma and isolation. And, Angela Y. Davis says this so accurately, and that is that people think social problems go to jail, but people do. And so I was doing that time right alongside my father. And there, but for the grace of God, go I, because the children of incarcerated parents are 4 times more likely to be incarcerated, to drop out of school, to abuse, to suffer from substance use disorder. So this is systemic. And I just thank you so much for your commitment.
No, there's absolutely no question. It is systemic. And the other issue I look at a lot, and that's jobs. Coming this as a businessman, and I left the business just for addiction, mental health, and criminal justice, because they're so interconnected, and those are what I just care about passionately. But before I was elected, we had hired over 500 returning citizens, and what we found was second chances work. We had a 14% better retention rate. I led a project at the ACLU on that, and we got lots of other businesses involved, et cetera. And that's a working solution for people and businesses. And so I have a bill we put together that we wrote, and Maxine Waters is my co-sponsor, to take that ban the box effort nationwide and make every company, just like my company did, we banned the box and gave people a fair, honest second chance.
Yeah, thank you.
And what
Thank
a
you for being
win-win.
a pace setter. Thank you for being a pace setter in that way. And we need, more to follow suit. You're incentivizing them with this bill, but it's really disingenuous. I know in my district, 30% of those that are released from correctional facilities are released to shelters. So it's very disingenuous if you are experiencing discrimination in housing. If you don't have a home and a stable foundation, how can you pursue employment? So it's very disingenuous to tell people to come out, make a legitimate contribution to society, but you are not setting them up to do that. And so it's not shocking that the recidivism numbers are so very high, because those barriers to employment, to housing, to those foundational things that are necessary. So again, thank you. I hope I'm a co-sponsor on that. If I'm not already, we'll get on.
Yeah, no, we'll double check on that one. But I'll tell you, it just give people a job. They got health care. That's a human right. And, we go on from there, and vacation and everything, and retirement, and they want to create a life. But I'll tell you, the point you brought up about coming into a shelter and how hard it is to even apply for that job. I'm working another bill, which we'll get with your team on, and that we're working with the Bureau of Prisons and trying to get large companies like JP Morgan and big companies, FedEx, UPS, that have good jobs at entry levels, to partner with the Bureau of Prisons to create jobs and test programs before someone leaves prison. And so my feeling is kind of like when we were in college. We were recruited. I was self-employed, but my wife was recruited by other companies and to go work for them. And before she left, she had a path to a job. So my vision is that when someone comes out of incarceration, they go to their home. It might be Greensboro, it might be Milwaukee or Baltimore or whatever. And we've already got the job lined up for them. But we need that wraparound service. We need the housing. We need the addiction help. We need the mental health help. So we're trying to pull it all together, because we got to spend money to save money. And if we spend money on helping out these folks, they're going to succeed, and they're never going to be back in prison, and they'll pay taxes one day.
That's right. Well, keep us posted on that. And I do also just want to say, look, I know that this stuff is second nature for you, but I do have to just acknowledge the intention with which you are using words like returning citizens. I want people to take note. We did see some recent media outlets that have said they will no longer use terminology like, inmate or felon. All of these things make a difference, because when you are talking about human beings in the abstract, it is exactly why you can support and be complicit in the ways in which they are, their dignity is not preserved and their humanity is not seen. And so, please refer to those that are incarcerated exactly as that. They are incarcerated men and women. And when they are released from correctional facilities, they are returning citizens. They are returning to, their families and to their communities. But, those things make a difference, because we're not only seeking to advance policies, but it's also about changing consciousness, and it's about shifts in culture, and language matters. So I know those things are second nature to you, but I did just want to take a moment just to, acknowledge the intentionality of your word choices.
No, I think that's really important. We thank you for that, because that intentionality is key, and the stigmatization.
That's right.
Is such a big issue that we've got to get past it and pull together in a different direction. But tell us a little bit about your Justice for Incarcerated Moms Act. If you can elaborate on why that's important, and the lack of health care. I mean, medically assisted treatment for those that are addicted. I mean, in prison, good luck if you're incarcerated. And tell us about that act a bit.
Well, it's hard to believe, but it's just where we find ourselves, that we have to legislate humanity. The fact that we have to legislate and say you should not shackle incarcerated pregnant women while giving birth. I mean, how about they shouldn't be incarcerated in the first place? So this is why we should be, pursuing alternatives to incarceration. And I think about COVID and how we were fighting to decarcerate, given the fact that our jails and our prisons are really petri dishes for a virus like the coronavirus to thrive.
Yeah.
And amongst those vulnerable groups, we were having to lobby aggressively for incarcerated women to be decarcerated in the midst of a pandemic. And so, our Justice for Incarcerated Moms Act, which I thank you for being a co-sponsor of, and this is a part of a larger package, a momnibus package. And this comes out of work that has been spearheaded and that we've done in partnership with Congresswoman Lauren Underwood of Illinois and Congresswoman Alma Adams out of North Carolina. There's a Black Women's Maternal Health Caucus under the Congressional Black Caucus. And so we have this momnibus, and within that is the Justice for Incarcerated Moms. And, look, at the end of the day, this is about fostering change by creating systems that protects the health and dignity of incarcerated women, and then enlist them as partners in our fight for justice and equity. So one of the key tenets of our bill is data collection. We don't even know how many incarcerated women there are. And so we find ourselves in an incarceration crisis in this country, and women make up one of its fastest growing populations. I know in a moment we'll talk about my work to end the push-out crisis, but we have, more girls justice involved and more women incarcerated than ever before. And yet they are one of the most overlooked. And in fact, 80% of incarcerated women are mothers, and 5% of incarcerated women that we know of arrive at prison pregnant.
Wow.
So, the bill, as I said, we have to legislate humanity. So one of the first things that it prioritizes is putting an end to the practice of shackling pregnant individuals by tying federal funding eligibility to states that enact shackling laws. So we're using, this is, carrot stick. We're using the power of the purse there. And then additionally, our Justice for Incarcerated Mom Act, it funds alternatives to incarceration programs at the state and local level, along with providing maternal health programs like access to doulas, healthy food and nutrition, mental health, and substance use counseling. So.
No, that's the type of thing that we really got to get across the finish line. So often this body just doesn't get anything done. And a lot of that lies with the Senate, of course. And the Senate, where they specialize in getting nothing done. But at the end of the day, we got to continue to fight like hell. Because
I'm not laughing at the issue is very serious, but I'm laughing out of my appreciation again for your bluntness. Just tell it like it is, David. I appreciate you.
It's really frustrating. It really is. As a business guy, you think you see a right policy, it helps people, you do it, and you move forward. But that's unfortunately not how it works for you and I, but we're on it.
That's right.
And last thing, I don't want to hold you up, but let's talk about school to prison pipeline. Your work in Boston. What do we need to get done on a national basis? I mean, as I said, it's just, 82% of our folks in prison are Black or brown. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, well, I did previously refer to it as school to prison, but my thought partner in this work, Dr. Monique Morris from the National Black Women's Justice Institute, really wants us to refer to it as the school to confinement pathways, because a pipeline infers that it's like a straight shot, when this is really about, a series of events and policies that are resulting in the push out disproportionately Black, brown, and disabled young people. And so, the top lines of this, David, this is very consistent with another bill I introduced called Counseling Not Criminalization. And it's about us investing in restorative justice practices. It's about us investing in socio-emotional wellness supports, which are proven not only to support our young people in their health and wellness, but in their readiness to learn. So it also combats the achievement gap. Right now, if you look at the data over the last 2 decades, we have invested $1 billion federal dollars in growing our school police to 46,000 strong, when our social worker to student ratios, if your school even has a social worker, which our young people desperately need, are 2,000 to 1. That's unacceptable. 90% of students do not have access to a school nurse, a social worker, or a guidance counselor. And so for all of the social ills that we've been talking about that are destabilizing households, the greatest gift that we can give any child is a stable adult. But most of the adults have been destabilized, and that's only been exacerbated by the pandemic. Pre-pandemic, we know that our young people were crossing those thresholds into learning communities, carrying so many traumas. Poverty is traumatic, food insecurity is traumatic, fear of deportation is traumatic, being unhoused, being displaced. And so we need to make those investments in those socio-emotional wellness supports. And that means more school nurses, more social workers, more guidance counselors, not more school police officers.
Police officers in school, just one bad idea, case closed, move on. And we've looked also at the same area on the social worker ratios. And, you are so right. They are just so wrong. And, we're doing a GAO study right now we've asked to be done, and it'll look at the actual number of social workers, therapists, addiction specialists, psychiatrists in the country, and what we anticipate the needs will be, and look at the delta. And then we can help people get into these challenging fields that are really hard work, but low pay. And it's what we need these folks in our inner cities. We need them in our rural areas, where they're not there to practice to help our children move forward. So we've got a lot to do.
At some point, I'm going to speak with you, Rep, about, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but we do have in my district, we actually have a high school that is a sober school. It's a recovery school.
Yep.
Yes. And I think it might be the only one in the country, but I'll follow up with you about that. But the point is that our young people are battling just so many challenges, and we need to equip them with the wraparound supports that they need for their health and wellness, but also for their readiness to learn. And we should not be contributing to these school to confinement pathways.
No, it's pretty easy choice, but again, getting it done is another problem. But, with people like yourself and ourselves in a vision that's relentless, that's focused, we're going to move the needle on these issues. But the systemic racism in this country, we've hit the stop button, and we got to stop it in so many ways. It's truly unbelievable.
Absolutely, and we see that with the disparate impact of school discipline, suspension and expulsion policies. In my district, Black girls are experiencing those rates at 4 times higher than their white peers, and oftentimes it's just for how they show up in the world, or for the equivalent adolescent behavior, and they're just being treated differently, or for wearing your hair in a natural hairstyle. I mean, imagine losing classroom time and being suspended simply because you're wearing your hair in braids or wearing an afro. So these policies that on their face appear to be race neutral, in fact, there is embedded bias in them. Hence the disparate impact on Black and brown students and girls, increasingly so. That's the thing, is that for a long time, the conversation was just about how at improvement risk Black and brown boys are, but our girls were being overlooked in that dialogue. And again, there are more girls justice involved now and more women incarcerated than ever before.
No, I've seen the women incarcerated numbers are just crazy. So let's thank you. I don't want to take up too much of your time. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you.
I had a lot of fun, And your knowledge in this area is just phenomenal. And your commitment and enthusiasm it's very contagious. And I think the folks watching are really going to appreciate it and know they got an ace in the hole down here in Washington from Massachusetts. And so thank you so much for your time, and let's keep fighting the fight.
That's right. Teamwork makes the dream work. So appreciate you. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.